What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Somewhat Sports Podcast. My name is Chris, and I'm joined by two of the greats in this industry, Jurg and Dame. Fellas, how are we this week?
I'm happy that the band is back together. I missed you, Dame. I missed you last week.
I didn't.
Well, I don't give a fuck what Chris thinks. Appreciate you, Jurg. Miss you too. I'm doing good. It's finally getting hot. Summer's finally starting to creep in here, so I'm excited.
Yeah, pretty short and sweet. Canada wildfires are still going on. Get your shit together, Canada. I've had enough of y'all already. But yeah, look, fellas, it's very simple. Yes, free agency is right around the corner. A bunch of moves will happen. So we don't have anything necessarily planned because over the past couple of weeks, we've actually been talking about possible free agents and where they could land. So right now, for this episode, I'm thinking we talk about notable free agents, where they could end up, and then maybe talk about the directions of certain teams that we think will be players in free agency. You know, just kind of a free-for-all discussion. Good opportunity to talk about, some teams that we don't usually talk about. But, yeah, fellas, are we ready?
I am. I have the official dates here if you want them, Chris. Just for
Talk to me.
So NBA free agency officially kicks off June 30th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Times. Teams can immediately negotiate and reach deals with players. July 1st through 6th is considered the negotiation moratorium period, and all contracts cannot be officially signed until 12:01 a.m. on July 6th.
None of this matters because the tampering shit is probably OD. Players agree to contracts like right away. And the NBA is not going to do anything about it. Adam Silver's buns. So, look, nothing's confirmed as of yet. I think we had one deal that was confirmed yesterday, so we'll talk about that. But
all they do is just punish, every once in a while, one or two teams every single offseason gets punished with taking away a second round pick, which to me
in 10 years
is so stupid because it just means it's one less guy getting drafted in that year. And I think that's screwed up for the college kids. Just find the freaking owners. Anyways.
Yeah. I agree with you, Jurg. I agree. It's just stupid. Come on. There's tampering. It's not going to stop. Let's just move on. And there are some players that are heavily rumored to sign with certain teams that we'll also talk about. You see reports on Twitter. So if you guys want to jump in, of course, and if you guys read something that I haven't brought up yet, feel free. Please feel free. Jump on my back. All right. So let's talk about the move from yesterday. Nikola Vucevic will resign with the Bulls. They're finalizing a deal. 3 years, $60 million. This podcast gets a lot of things right. The Bulls' downfall was one of them, and I say downfall because they are stuck in the worst place possible. Purgatory. That's right, the Chicago Bulls. Look, they tried it a few years ago when they signed Lonzo. They traded for Vooch in a trade that, the Orlando Magic have now won. They signed DeMar DeRozan, and they already had Zach LaVine. So that was their team going forward. Everyone thought they were going to be a contender in the East. We laughed. We were right. Because there was no shot that team was going to make any noise. I didn't want to hear it. It was just a team full of redundant talent. Now, perhaps things might have been differently if Lonzo was healthy, and we don't know if Lonzo will ever be healthy again. It's on the table that he might not play another NBA game, which is wild to think about. I know, this is going to be like a Lonzo Ball episode, but geez, man, prayers up to him, bro. I've always been a fan of Lonzo, and it's kind of surreal because after that hype in 2017, unreal hype, now that he's not going to play another game, that's kind of crazy. The fact that that's a possibility, but yeah. For the Bulls, re-signing Vooch, I don't know what we're doing. I think we talked about, if we were in their shoes, if it was up to us, we'd go full rebuild, right? But it seems like they're in too deep at this point, right? Jurg, I think you called them re-signing Vooch. You were right. It's just what is the Bulls' plan? What is their direction going forward? Because, there's all these Zach LaVine trade rumors. I don't know. I think they value him, and I think the price is going to be too high for teams to trade for him. So it's kind of just they're going to run it back with DeMar, Vooch, and Zach, and maybe they'll find a point guard in free agency or in the trade market. But this is not good for the Bulls. shout out to Vooch for making all this money. I'm assuming it's like a 2-year, and then the third year might be a team option. I feel like that might be the direction going forward. If it's not, oof. But yeah, it's a directionless Chicago Bulls team. They're stuck in purgatory. It's kind of like the Orlando Magic a few years ago. When they had freaking Vooch, coincidentally, Fournier, Aaron Gordon. It's just like it's a first round team max. And yeah, I mean they'll be entertaining for like in the regular season, but I don't know. It's just they've kind of, in my opinion, they know that they've like dug themselves into this hole, and it's just like it's kind of difficult getting out. You could have just not re-signed Vooch, but again, like I said, they're just like screw it. I mean, we're kind of already in this position. I mean, they don't want to turn back. I don't think the Bulls want to rebuild. That's the thing. And Chicago, big market team. They were like in the gutter a few years ago, and it's just like, damn, we're going to be in the gutter again if we just don't re-sign Vooch and if we have to trade all these players. So we think the Bulls should go through a rebuild. They won't do it. I get it from a business perspective, but man, you are not going to produce winning results in the slightest. I don't want to take credit because we called this. But again, who knows what would happen if Lonzo... I don't think Lonzo would have made that much of a difference, but I think they would have been in a little bit of a better position because I do think he's the perfect point guard for that type of team and organizing the offense. But I don't know. They need to be in the market for a point guard, by the way. But yeah, fellas, we don't have to spend too much time on this. Any comments, concerns, criticisms on Vooch re-signing, Jurg?
Just like my thing with the Bulls and certain teams just choosing not to go through a rebuild is that I think the whole thing with the fans and trying to keep the interest of the fan base, you can go through a rebuild while still being a semi-respectable organization.
Right.
If you just don't blatantly tank like certain teams do, like people will show up. Like I understand it because Chicago, that is one of the cities in this country that has professional teams in all 4 sports. And your main competition throughout a majority of the season is the Blackhawks. And, well, they just got the first overall pick, and they just picked with that first overall pick. So you got 2 rebuilding teams there. And I kind of get it's like you're trying to be the most valuable ticket in town in terms of a sports team. But you kind of mentioned it, Chris. I mean, like Chris Dame, look to your left or look to your right. I don't know like how your guys' rooms are set up when you're recording. You see a wall. That is what the Bulls have been doing the last couple of seasons, just running into the wall over and over and over. And it's just like, we know that LaVine as your best player, there is a ceiling. But Nikola Vucevic as your third best player is also only so much of a ceiling. Like, this team is, you said it, Chris, it's in shambles. Lonzo Ball being injured, I feel so bad for him because this is a guy who's, I think, would have really developed a great role player career for himself had it not been for this. And I hope he is able to find a way past all this, but it's looking more and more unlikely day by day. But yeah, I said it because if this team is going to continue to feign the idea that they can contend, they need to keep this. I don't even like calling it a core, but they need to keep this roster together. And this, to me, it was the most obvious thing because I don't really think there was much of a market for Vucevic. I think this only confirms the fact that the Chicago Bulls are a half-decent team, nothing overly special, and this is not a franchise that's going to do any kind of supreme winning anytime soon. And to be fair, my last point, you still need a decent player or two if you do end up going through the rebuild. So maybe Vucevic is just there to have someone who can actually put up 20 points if/when they decide to trade LaVine and or DeRozan. So you need someone there to get the cap floor and, fill up the seats maybe.
Dame, any comments before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I also don't get the direction that the Bulls are going in, but even if they're going through a rebuild, I do think this is a good signing. I mean, it's only 3 for $60, so like only for 3 years, it's not that bad. And then say they actually reel up and understand that they need to go through a rebuild and kind of face the realization. It's a good contract to trade. Like, teams aren't going to shy away from it because it's such a crazy contract that they can't trade for, can't afford. Like $20 million a year for a pretty solid big, you could definitely get value in return for that if they ever do decide to fully go in that direction. So I think one way or another, whether they want to be competitive, obviously Vooch is still a solid player that still contributes to the team. So I think that way they win in that aspect. And if they do want to trade him down the road, I think it's a pretty decent contract for other teams to take on and a pretty solid player to take on as well. That could bring them back value in a rebuild.
Okay. All right. Good balancing there, Dame. I think you were the only pro about this, but as opposed to me and Jurg being cons. But yeah, that's enough Vucevic talk. And the Bulls just I don't know about the Bulls, man. They're gonna have to do something. They will not move me for the rest of my 20s.
It's called a wholesale purge. That's what they have to do.
I mean, okay. Fellas, there are reports, I believe. Well, let's just call them rumors because that's what they are for now. That the Houston Rockets will be major players in free agency. According to Mark Stein, Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks are expected. Well, let's just say they're expected to be pursued by the Rockets, right? In his words, the projected offers for Dillon Brooks, 2 years, 28 to 32 million, so 14 to 16 million per year. And for Fred VanVleet, 2 years, 83.6 million, which is like 41.8 million. No, that's the wrong math. Maybe 41.8 million per year. Jurg, 41.8 times 2. Tell me what the math is on that. Yeah, 41 million for Fred VanVleet, by the way.
83.6.
Let's go. I got it right. Nice. College degree, baby. So, okay. Another thing, if Fred VanVleet does end up with the Rockets, I called that. Dame wasn't here last week, but I told Jurg that I expect Fred VanVleet to be pursued by the Houston Rockets, and it seems like this is the direction they're going in. They need a point guard. They have a ton of cap space. They need veteran presence. Udoka isn't going to just coach young dudes. He wants like a veteran presence, and they need veteran presence. Good God, do they do. The thing is, for the Rockets, I guess, like, there's no risk in overpaying, right? That team, that franchise is a little bit hazy right now. 2 years isn't crazy. You know, you would hope that you could implement some type of winning ways with Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks to some extent. I don't think Dillon Brooks is an awful veteran to have, but like you would hope that those two, because Dillon Brooks, I mean, the last few years of Memphis, there has been a little bit of winning formula from them, and Fred VanVleet champion. So, you know, you could hope you could instill some type of winning culture while also developing those young guys, because those young guys, it's gonna be a big process because like Jalen Green, Sengun, Kevin Porter Jr., they're losers. All they know is losing, right? So it's going to be a process because they're going to need to adjust heavily, right? Because if you want to be like a winning team, they're going to have to adjust their play. It can't be just dumbass shots, just a free-for-all offense now. It needs to be a disciplined structure here. And Udoka was a good signing for them, coaching-wise, I think. So you have a decent coach. I think Fred VanVleet, again, you get your point guard, champion right there. A little bit overrated to me, but again, still a solid player nonetheless. And I think Dillon Brooks, you get your defensive, quote-unquote defensive player that could do the dirty work here. Again, I think these are two solid locker room presences. Is that the plural? Yeah, I don't know if that's plural. But like two solid veterans to have in the locker room, for lack of a better term. But good Lord, $41 million per year for Fred VanVleet. I think it's all but confirmed that he's gone. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what the Rockets want to do. Probably a playoff push, obviously, but to get the ball rolling, like, I don't necessarily know what you want to do because, like, what's after, you know, Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks if they're just 2 years, right? Are you just hoping that the young guys make a big enough leap to a point where, like, you just kind of rely on them? I don't know. But it's clear that, you know, they just want to get back to winning, quote unquote, and back to the playoffs or play in. But yeah, I mean, I don't hate these moves for the Rockets. I knew they were going to overpay for someone. Fred VanVleet, again, it makes sense. They need a point guard, champion right there. Udoka needs a guy that he can rely on. Yeah, I kind of like these moves for the Rockets. I mean, what is overpaying in the NBA these days, man? You know, and if it's not my team, I don't really give a shit. But Dame, any comments on Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks getting these type of contracts from the Rockets, and what do you make of these moves?
Well, Dillon Brooks, I don't think belongs in the NBA. But Fred VanVleet, I understand why they would massively overpay for him on such a short contract because there is a league minimum for your salary cap.
Yes.
And obviously, rebuilding young teams that aren't really ready to win now need to meet that minimum, but obviously they don't have the talent on their team where they have massive amounts of salary on their books. So somehow they got to meet it, but you don't want to lock yourself into kind of a long contract where a couple years down the road, when you are ready to take that next step and compete, you want to have flexibility, whether it's draft picks or salary cap in this situation, to be able to get those guys to put you over the top, right? And the Rockets right now, this year or even next year, are not going to be ready to contend. Who knows 3-4 years down the road if they will or not. But for now, bringing a guy like Fred VanVleet reaches obviously your salary cap minimum. You bring in a guy that's won a lot of games in Toronto, even won a championship, obviously. He's been part of winning culture. He's been in the league for a while. He can be that veteran presence for a team that desperately needs it. With guys like Kevin Porter and Jalen Green, these guys are super mature, and all they know is how to like kind of play street ball and not really winning basketball in the NBA. And the way of life in the NBA on and off the court. I think a guy like Fred VanVleet can definitely help that out. With Dillon Brooks, I don't think he can literally anyway. On and off the court, leadership, nothing. I don't think he brings anything to the table for that team. But VanVleet, I really do like. He's obviously a good player still. Chris said he's overrated. I do agree with that. I do think he's overrated, but he can definitely help this team out and on and off the court. And I think just it's smart. For 2 years, you kind of leave him on the books so you reach your minimum that you need, but you don't kind of cap yourself in cap space when you really already competing. 2 years, he's off the books. And you hope by then your young guys have really taken those steps to be real star players and kind of form their game into winning basketball. So then when he's off the books and you're ready to actually go get that marquee free agent, you could kind of lock them into a longer contract so they could be on the team longer and compete for a longer time.
By the way, $40 million a year in Texas? Woo!
Good for him.
I mean, Fred VanVleet, I don't blame him.
After living in Toronto, cold in the winter.
Yeah, now, you know what, Fred? Enjoy the weather and your money, brother.
Yep.
Canadian taxes too, boys. Don't forget,
Yeah,
he's leaving it all. So to those 2 points, I'm not going to go to the extent of Dame of making the joke of Dillon Brooks better start learning Chinese.
I don't think he was joking.
No,
100% wasn't joking.
I know that
he belongs in China.
I think Dillon Brooks will get signed in this free agency. It doesn't necessarily surprise me a team like Houston's going to get at him.
Yeah.
Because I don't see
another team.
I think Dillon Brooks needs to spend a year or two on one of these bad teams to rebuild his reputation.
Yeah.
I don't see a reason why a contending team would want him there. Look, Dillon Brooks is the epitome of confidence can take you far, but then from that point, reality sets in. And reality set in very, very hard over the last 2 seasons for those Memphis Grizzlies. And him opening his mouth constantly was a deterrent more than a addition. So it's not surprising me that a team like the Rockets wants that. But like, if you want to develop a really good and I've said this in previous podcasts, boys, so you can attest. Like I've said, you can't just march a team of children out there and expect to win basketball games. And this is a Rockets team that added Whitmore and one of the Thompson brothers in this past draft. They have Kevin Porter Jr. They have Jalen Green. They have Jabari Smith Jr. They have the true gem of that lot in Alfred Şengün. And they have Udoka there. And obviously, we've said this entire time, with Udoka taking that job, it was always my theory that they're not going to waste time. They're going to start adding veterans bit by bit, because I don't think Udoka just feels like he's not a young player's coach in terms of you have 7 guys on the roster sub age 23.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, Tatum and Brown were young when he coached them, but they were mature. They've been in the league for years.
They're all stars.
Exactly. These guys are not. Well, Şengün should be one day, but the rest of that supporting cast leaves a lot to be desired. And so you bring in veterans to try to be a positive influence in the locker room. Is Dillon Brooks really that guy? Like, that's my only question. Like, if you need to build up a good veteran-laden locker room, is Dillon Brooks really the guy? I understand Fred VanVleet. Like Dame said, you need to reach a certain cap floor. I think that's the case in 3 of the 4 sports. Baseball doesn't matter, but like football, I'm pretty sure there is. NHL, there is very much so. And now in the NBA. And it makes sense on a lesser term deal to just hike up the value. Like Fred VanVleet, I'm not sure what his market was going to be to begin with, but I don't think it matters that it's only a 2-year deal. I think if he sees it, he's going to take it. And in those 2 years, the Rockets are just going to continue roster building and try to mix and match things to ultimately decide which of this young core they're keeping and who's being shipped out. Because I just do not see a scenario where all of these young guys are Houston Rockets players 2 years from now. Several of them are going to have to be moved because you're not even going to be able to afford all these guys in the future with all their rookie contract extensions. So I think Fred VanVleet makes sense. It's a short-term deal with a high cap value. You bring in a guy there who can be a proper veteran. He's won a championship. He's been in playoff series against tough competitors. Fred VanVleet makes a lot of sense in the world. Again, Dillon Brooks is just, I'm not shocked that he would be going to a bad team. But is it the Rockets?
I mean, he'll take what he can get.
No. I know. I'm not saying like from Dillon Brooks' perspective,
even the Rockets,
Houston. I'm saying from the Rockets' perspective, like, look, there are a number of veterans out there on the market that I wouldn't mind trying to sign. Heck, there's even a veteran or two I wouldn't mind trading for that's at a lower contract value to try to be a veteran to my young guys. I don't know if I want Dillon Brooks to be that guy. I don't need Jabari Smith Jr. talking trash to Giannis in the second quarter, and then Giannis finishes the game with 50. I don't need that if I'm the Rockets. So I don't know. It's like Fred VanVleet, TBD. Like I think is great. And Chris, you absolutely called it. Another hit for this podcast. Dillon Brooks, I don't know, man. Like I'm not going to say that he should be learning Chinese or Taiwanese or Mandarin or whatever the fuck, but just I if I'm Houston, I gotta think twice about that.
I mean, they're not a good organization. That's the thing for me. It's just like dumb organizations make dumb moves. Is it the right move? Probably not. Am I surprised? Not at all. Okay, that'll do it for the Rockets talk. I've had enough of that team. Some notable unrestricted free agents. Russell Westbrook, Chris Middleton opted out. Kyrie Irving, D'Angelo Russell, Draymond Green, Kevin Love, Harrison Barnes, Jeremy Grant. Yeah, those are the more notable ones. Kyle Kuzma as well. Fellas, here's the thing. So let's make this a little bit of an open discussion. Okay, so Russell Westbrook. This is going to be a little tough. I could see him going back to the Clippers on minimum money. I just don't know who they'd be in the market for point guard wise. They need a point guard. I think Kawhi will be back by the start of the regular season. I mean, I'm done kind of guessing that, but I think he'll be back with the Clippers. Me and Jurg kind of talked about Middleton. He opted out. $40 million is a lot of money. I think the Bucks need to re-sign him because they need a second guy behind Giannis. And if Middleton leaves, then what do we do? Because we don't have that guy, right? So like they kind of have to re-sign Middleton, even if it means overpaying for him. Kyrie Irving, Woj said the market for him is a little null. It's very limited. And Kyrie Irving wants to find a home that, he could he wants to find a home for the next 4 years. Like that's going to be like his team until he retires, which hopefully is soon, by the way. But apparently Ramona Shelburne says he's taking meetings. The market's limited. I don't know what meetings he's taking. Probably just the Lakers or something. Draymond Green, again, we've talked about him ad nauseum, but he did have dinner with Damian Lillard of the Northwest team that we will not talk about. Jeremy Grant, I mean, that boy wants a lot of money. I could see the Blazers, overpaying and re-signing for him. Oh my God, I said the name. Fuck. All right, I'm in the shadow realm. Fuck.
Get off.
Yeah. Jurg, take it, bro. Take it.
Wait.
I said the team.
No, I understand that, but like, who am I specifically focusing on? The team?
I'm sorry. All right. Bad. I'm slapping myself twice.
Yeah,
all right.
That's your last warning. That's it.
I'm off for the podcast next week if I bring them up one more time. But yeah, these are like the notable free agents. Okay. Russell Westbrook, Chris Middleton. I think James Harden is gonna re-sign with Philly. Because I think there's too much noise in terms of like the Rockets pivoting with like Fred VanVleet. I don't see them going after James Harden now. But fellas, of these notable names, what do we think is gonna happen? Like, which team do you guys see, making a lot of noise in free agency? And like, which players do you see those teams targeting?
I don't know about free agency, but I think the main team that I would be interested in would be the Nets, because I think structurally the Nets are in a spot that you have that trade with the Suns from the season that it landed you Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson, although Cam Johnson you still need to get under contract, but irregardless, like You have those two being there. You still have a couple veterans on that team. It's a decent squad, and you just had a decent draft. I actually like the Derek Whitehead and the Jalen Wilson picks for that team off the bench. I think both those guys are going to be, good, could be decent contributors with some development. But I think this Nets team, we saw they struggled a bit last season, but they were still able to hold on to the 6th seed. This team, I think, is a scorer and maybe an extra depth player, like a 3-point shooter off the bench away from rounding out to being a much better team again. And I think it wouldn't surprise me if the Nets try to go, big game hunt. Well, as big game as you could get in this free agency, hunting in free agency. Now, who that would be is kind of difficult because I think Chris Middleton would be positional redundancy with both Johnson and Bridges. So I don't think that would make much sense. James Harden, when you go back to Brooklyn now, there's no KD and Kyrie. I highly doubt it. I think it would be difficult, but I could very much see a world where the Nets do try to make an acquisition in free agency to help this team out. Because it's a solid roster. They need that one last piece. But I guess maybe that's more of a transactional team, not as much free agency. So I apologize on that, Chris. Free agency. I don't know, Dame. Do you have a team as I struggle here to?
I don't have a specific team. I just have a general thought that I think a lot of these guys are going to stay with their teams.
Okay.
A lot of these guys are going to resign. I think it's going to be a pretty boring free agency because a lot of the teams with the cap space are the bad teams. And guys like James Harden, Draymond Green, Kyrie Irving, these guys don't want to go to like the Pacers, the Rockets, and like all these teams at the bottom. They want to go to contenders and win. Like, I don't see Draymond going to Portland. Like, I don't, unless they give him like $40 million a year, something like the Warriors won't. But I just don't see that happening. And I see Draymond going back to the Warriors. Mm-hmm. I mean, I see James Harden staying with the Sixers. I don't see him going to Rockets. Jeremy Grant, I think, is going to stay with the Blazers because the Blazers are going to try to keep Damian Lillard there, and they know that none of these free agents really want to go there with the uncertainty of what's going on there. So I think they're going to overpay for him. Who else is there?
Dame, you mentioned the Forbidden franchise twice. You said both the city and the name. So while Dame has to sit in timeout for a brief moment of time,
right. So Chris Middleton back to the Bucks too. All right, last one before I'm done.
You're good. You're good. My bad. No, actually, Dame. So I want to focus in on one of the names you just mentioned there as we, swim about and try to figure this out. Draymond Green, I think, is one of the more polarizing names in this free agency period because I think obviously you mentioned him having a meeting with, that franchise out in the Pacific Northwest that shall not be named directly anymore on the show. That's obviously a attempt for them to try to build around their star guard because unfortunately for me, who's a Miami Heat fan, Lillard has decided to be like, okay, I'll give you guys time to build a roster. And it irks me to no end. And I officially have zero sympathy if Damian Lillard ends his career with no rings. I don't care anymore. I don't care. I don't care. You've had a million opportunities to leave, bro. And you continue to be like, oh, I'll give them a chance. Like this is why when Lillard is like, oh, I don't feel like I get enough respect. This is why that franchise is beyond the point that you need to give them a chance. Mm-hmm. It's finished. It's over. Who the heck are they going to add? And that's why I mentioned Draymond earlier, because I know Draymond to Portland was the big thing. Guys, I want to throw this out there. I want to throw this out there to the two of you.
Yep.
What about Draymond? Like, this was a rumor I heard. Draymond to Dallas. Is that like Draymond has a good relationship with a lot of the superstars in this league because as annoying as he is on the court, goddamn, that dude is like,
he's a personable dude.
He's personable. He's entertaining. But when he's on your team, you love him. He's that typical guy. He's good Dillon Brooks, basically.
Well, here, Jurg, we talked about him going to Dallas. I think those are
I talked about him going to Dallas when the season started.
Dallas is one of the three likely landing spots for him. It was Golden State, it was Dallas, and it was the Lakers. But if Lillard's fiending for you that much, and they have the money to sign you, I could see Portland, man. But I could see it, but I also can't. It would look so he would look so weird in a Blazers uniform. I said it twice. Damn it.
It's all right. It's all right. Come on.
Yeah, I mean,
we can't keep kicking ourselves.
Draymond Green in Dallas, I think, is a really good fit because he takes so much like playmaking pressure off Luka.
Yeah.
Luka literally needs to create everything for that offense. And even with Kyrie, like Kyrie isn't an off-the-ball player that's going to go set screens for someone off ball. Like Luka still needs to create basically everything. Put Draymond Green there. Not only is he setting those illegal screens for Luka that he has been doing for Steph for the past decade, He's going to be able to get the ball in that post. He's going to be able to give those handoffs kind of like Jokic does. He's going to be able to make plays for other guys. Things that Kyrie isn't really adept at doing. He's more of like, just give me the ball, I'm going to go get you a bucket. I'm not going to create for everyone else. That's something Draymond Green can do. And, of course, his defense is something that Dallas has been looking for so long.
Yep.
So I think that, like, I've been saying for so long to, like, my group of friends, I even definitely mentioned on this podcast for so long, how great of a fit I think Draymond would be in Dallas. But I don't know. I just see him going back to Golden State. I can't see him in any other uniform.
I know. It would look so weird.
I think we're starting to get to a point where guys are going to be playing on other teams. And
yeah,
like,
listen, I hope so, because I'm sick of them. They had their run. It's over. Go get your money. Start something new. Help out Luka with your fucking antics and shit. But because I'm over it.
Right. The reason why I say that is because, like, I think we're starting to enter a time in the league where it's going to be more difficult to keep certain pieces together. And at some point you need to make these decisions. Because remember, guys, per the new CBA that was recently agreed upon, there are new penalties now for teams that are going to go over the second apron of the luxury tax level. And it's going to severely punish them. From the news, because I actually screenshot this before, because I think this is prevalent to bring up for a specific case like this where Draymond in Golden State and his future is in flux, especially because of the Chris Paul addition. And now it's all like the Curry, the Chris Paul, the Wiggins, and the Clay contracts all there. So this is the excerpt that I took. Once teams pass a certain point in spending, they'll lose access to key roster building tools. The NBA will revoke their taxpayer mid-level exception. They'll be barred from signing players on the buyout market during the season, and they aren't able to trade for more money than they send out. They're also unable to trade draft picks 7 years out, which is a very popular thing to do with these deals for these superstars. Like, I very, like, as much as it'd be weird, I very much see a situation where Draymond is no longer a Warrior, and then it all comes down to what team is he going to go to, and how close is that team going to get? Because I don't know, respectfully, if you guys have any more to say about Draymond, but like, let's just stay on the topic of the Mavericks. What the hell happens with Kyrie Irving here? Like, is Kyrie going to stay?
Well, I think he is, and I think if you asked me like a month ago, I would say no, but I truly think the market for him is very null. Like, it's always gonna, like, I'm always gonna hear about the Lakers and like a star like Kyrie, but like, they can't afford him. And also, I don't know if I don't give a shit about the Lakers, but like, in the perspective, like, I wouldn't want Kyrie if I was on the Lakers. Like, little tweaks with the roster, but like, kind of run it back, maybe like make some like, some like within the margins type of additions, right? Like, I don't think you need like a Kyrie. Like, yeah, sure, you can, like, you need a closer, but like, dude, they went to the Western Conference Finals with that roster, and they didn't even have that roster. I'm talking about like the ones like post Russ trade, or release or some shit, whatever. But like, yeah, post Russ, like, I like the roster, and like, so you have a full season with them, add some like good complementary pieces to AD and LeBron. I think that's a dangerous team. I really do, and LeBron will be like, I know he's gonna be older, but like, weirdly enough, he's gonna be healthier because he kind of got hurt in the second half of the season. But I don't know, man. Other than the Lakers, I can't see another team going for Kyrie. Like, what meetings is he taking, bro? I want to know. I don't know. But like you guys said, like, it doesn't make sense. Dame, you said it. Like, it doesn't make sense for like these players to sign with like, or even look into signing with the Pacers or the Pelicans or like teams like that,
or the Hornets. Like,
yeah, there's no like,
these are all old guys that are kind of towards the tail end of their prime or career.
Yes,
in general, they're looking for Draymond, Harden, Kyrie. These guys are all looking to win. Maybe not Kyrie. Maybe he's looking for stability.
I think
but like these young rebuilding teams don't want to bring in a Kyrie with all the drama that he brings in. They're rebuilding, trying to build a culture. Kyrie ruins all that.
Yeah, this is the thing. The NBA is in like, it's weird because like, I think there's the Titan teams, the contenders, and then there's the rebuilding teams with like just like going on their young core. It's just, I feel like teams nowadays are going to be cautious with who they sign. They have to be. They have to be. I think teams are going to be more cautious into like, putting themselves in a headlock and just like getting themselves stuck by signing dudes like Kyrie Irving when they're not in contention. I think it's either you're going to go fully all in if you think you compete for a championship, or like you kind of hold back and you just start rebuilding. I don't know. I think, funny enough, I think the CBA included, I think, the middle class of the NBA, whether that pertains to the purgatory teams and just like the CB in general, it's going to kill a lot of teams, bro.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be no middle class in the NBA, I feel like. It's either going to be you suck or you're going to compete for the title.
Because the thing is that,
and by suck I mean like you're not going to win as many games, because there's going to be a bunch of teams that don't win many games that are still going to be like, decent to watch.
It really makes you wonder, because now with the play-in tournament, what is the 7 through 10 going to look like now, year in and year out? Because you look at the new tax implications for teams now, and obviously because the salary cap is going to go up, like the tax thresholds will increase as well. But if you're a team like Charlotte, let's say, with LaMelo Ball, who will have his rookie max deal, they have offers out there, like they put whatever tender qualifying offers out there for a PJ Washington, who, let's say 12, 15 million a year. Miles Bridges, who maybe it's only going to be a 1-year deal with him coming back into the NBA. So like, let's say 1 year, 15 mil for him. Like, like this is a very difficult thing for teams to field a full roster under these scenarios and not hit the tax. Like, a lot of these teams are going to hit the tax. And like you said, Chris, for a lot of these owners, they're not going to want to hit that tax floor if it's not worth it. Like, it's a very specific situation, or it's going to take a bunch of gymnastics for these teams to move around. I don't know if we're going to bring him up at some point. I don't know if there was a plan for it, but John Collins being traded by the Atlanta to the Utah Jazz. And the idea was, and I think it's been reported, that Jazz ownership is willing to get into that luxury tax threshold, but it needs to be the right pieces. So clearly, John Collins was not the right piece, which a lot of people could have told you that. But now it's, you said it, Chris, you have to make these smart investments. And it almost makes me wonder, guys, with the Fred VanVleet, like if it's only going to be a 2-year deal, or maybe at most it's a 2+1, do you think it behooves some of these players to try to just sign for shorter term deals now? I'm not saying for all these guys, but like Dane mentioned, Kyrie, he wants a long-term home to finish out his career. Maybe, being less of a head case at each destination would have helped you at this point, but regardless, does it behoove a couple of these players in free agency to only sign 2 to 3 year deals rather than a 4 or 5 or even a 1+1? Because I don't know. This is the kind of situation that's actually going to be a similar question brought up with some of hockey's free agents in this class, where this isn't the strongest possible class. And with the projection that the salary cap is meant to continue to go up, like, what decisions do you make about these deals, and what are teams trying to negotiate? It's just an idea I'm considering here, because the Hawks are willing to go into the threshold, but it needs to be the right guys. What player in this free agency class can we say about the Atlanta Hawks is the right guy for them to go in that tax threshold for, and for how many years? Because did they not just didn't they sign Murray to his extension when they got him last year, or no?
I don't think so. I don't know. I think, because I saw a report that they're looking to they might look into re-signing him. I don't know. I don't know, Jurg. I think it's difficult. I think capologists are going to have their work cut out for them, man.
Oh, they're going to be paid well. If you are a salary cap specialist in any sport right now, you deserve to be making a 6-figure salary, because the things that these teams are going to have to make you crunch in order to figure this out is God's work for organizations.
I don't know. Like, I know stability is going to be a thing for, players, but at this point, I won't be surprised if some of them pivot just to go for the biggest contract, even if it means 2 instead of 4. Whatever. If it gives me the most money, then I might as well just take that. I don't know. Because it's weird for a player like Fred VanVleet, right? 30, not young, not super old, but still, it's kind of like you're gonna have a home for 2 years, gonna get paid a shit ton of money, and it's going to be weird, because the older you get, the more stability you may want. It's just you're kind of in flux at that point. It's just but I am getting paid $40 million a year in Houston. Yeah. And it was going to be 2 years, but that sounds enticing. I don't know. I just think, Jurg, you were right a few weeks ago. GMs, capologists, their work's going to get cut out for them. They're going to have to earn every penny that they're paid now. Good Lord. The amount of gymnastics is going to be crazy with the NBA. CJ McCollum's a fucking idiot, bro. Who approved of this new CBA, bro? This shit's garbage. But yeah, the NBA is going to be tough, man. Not tough, but it's going to be, the movement around the NBA is going to be so skewed at it's going to be tough to kind of pinpoint motivation and enticing aspects because of this new CBA deal. But yeah, neither here nor there. Let's talk about some other notable free agents. Fellas, I think an underrated player in free agency, funny enough, is going to be Brook Lopez. I think that's going to be a sought-out free agent right there. Was in the running for defense. Was he in the running for defense player of the year? If not, then he was early on. But
he finished second or third in voting.
Okay, so in the running for defense player of the year. I think shout out to him. He's transformed his game to a point where he is one of the more sought-out free agents. Developed a jump shot. Where do we see Brook Lopez going? Because I heard that the Rockets did have interest, but clearly, they've pivoted to Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks, and I think Brook Lopez is going to be offered a lot of money. Which teams do you guys see Brook Lopez entertaining the idea of signing with? Because it's also another is he going to go to the most money or does he want to still contend? But if he still wants to contend, you could still stay with the Milwaukee Bucks, right? But do you guys see him leaving Milwaukee or do you see him re-signing? And if you do see him leaving Milwaukee, which team do you think he would sign with?
I think he's like such a perfect player for literally every contender.
Yeah,
he's a big that stretches the floor and plays elite defense.
Yep.
And that's not going to command $25-30 million a year like a Jokic or Embiid or some of these other guys. I mean, what's he going to get, like $15 million a year for like 3-4 years? That's so ideal for a guy who plays the way he does and contributes the way he does. Like the Lakers, the Warriors, I guess not the Nuggets because they have Jokic, but so many contenders could use him. The Heat could use him. The Bucks obviously need him. I think he's so essential to opening the floor for Giannis and helping Giannis with his defense and the Bucks in general. I think he has helped so many teams, and I think that middle-level exception for a lot of these teams that are over the cap is like $12 million. So that's why I could see him going to a couple contenders because that's maybe a little less than he'd get for a team that does have cap space. But 3 to 4 years for $12.5 million to play on a championship contending team, I think is just around where he would need to be. But if a team like the Rockets goes in and gives him like 4 for 80 or something like that, I could see him going there. Yeah, exactly. But I think he should go to a contender because he's just so good at what he does for the amount that he gets paid.
So I have 2 teams that I think right away. I don't know their cap situation besides one. I think one of them has more cap space. I think one of them has like a decent amount of cap space. I think there's 2 teams that I think right away impact starting seamless fit. And they're both Texas. Funny enough, it would be the Rockets, but not the Rockets.
Dallas and Houston? Or
no, Dallas and Spurs.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know that the Mavericks created some cap space dealing Bertans. Jurg, how much cap space do the Mavericks have? Could you look that up if you can?
I will. I would just say, Chris, remember they did trade Bertans, but they got Rashawn Holmes' contract. So
yeah, how much money do they? But in terms of fit, like Dame said, he could fit anywhere. But I do think he would be perfect for Dallas, man. Mm-hmm. Holy shit, him next to Luka would salivate playing with a player like Brook Lopez. He is a perfect fit for that team. For the Spurs, again, we have talked about Brook Lopez possibly signing with the Spurs. Again, I think he would be perfect for that team as well. I think Wemby is a natural 4. I think he would be better suited as the 4, have Lopez at the 5. Good Lord, would that be a very lengthy team, man. And I think, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Victor Wembanyama, Brook Lopez, and I guess you put out Trey Jones with the 1. That's talk about a 3-and-D type of team right there. Whew. I like it. I love Brook Lopez on the Spurs. But again, if someone's offering him 4 for 80, you take it, right? I think a lot of teams, he's gonna have a lot of suitors, man. But I'm interested to see where he goes because I think he can make a team like itch closer to the title, especially if they're like almost there. I really do think he's gonna have that much of an impact. I'm not saying he's gonna completely shift the culture. I'm just saying I think he could edge a team a lot closer. Kyle Kuzma, fellas, our favorite, our boy. I think he signs. We said this last week, Jurg. I heard there's some momentum. I think Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports reported this. The momentum is real apparently with him and the Sacramento Kings, and I thought he would be perfect for Sacramento. I think his style. He's still young. better defender than I thought he was. Could rebound the ball really well. I think he would be either 3. Who is it? Yeah, Harrison Barnes. Is Harrison Barnes a free agent? I believe.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, let's get rid of Harrison Barnes. I think Kuzma would be a very solid replacement for Harrison Barnes. Again, it's like you're probably going to have to overpay for Kuzma, but who's really signing with the Kings? And I think he would be a pretty decent fit. I think Kuzma on the Sacramento Kings is a match made in heaven, actually. Does he move the needle? Probably not, but I think they're better than they were last year. And if you're better than you were last year, you kind of beat the Warriors, right? You go to the second round. So, fellas, let's talk about some other players here. D'Angelo Russell, I think, is a wild card. I don't know where he goes. I feel bad for any team that does sign him. We talked about the Bulls being a decent fit for him, but I don't know if they have enough money. D'Angelo Russell is probably going to command a decent amount of money. Rightfully so, probably not. I don't think he deserves it, but again, with the new CBA, shit's just all in flux. And did another play? Oh, and this is the last player I'll talk about. Funny enough, Dante DiVincenzo, rumored to have suitors. I think Ian Begley reported. So he's been linked to the Knicks, but then Ian Begley reported that they might have competition with the Bulls, the Timberwolves, and the Pistons. I would love DiVincenzo on the Knicks. I think he's exactly what we need. A little reunion with him, Josh Hart, and Jalen Brunson, the Villanova boys. But, yeah, I think he's been underrated. I think he had a decent season with the Warriors. Knicks need shooting. I think he could kind of create his own shot. Look, it's not bad to have depth, especially in a Tom Thibodeau team. So I would love Dante DiVincenzo with the Knicks. I think the deadline for Josh Hart's contract was extended, right? They delayed it. I don't know what the proper term is, but they moved it to midnight tonight. I think there's a reason for that. I think they're recruiting Dante. I think they're all boys. I think Dante ends up on the Knicks, but I could see why the Timberwolves want him. I could see why the Pistons want him. The Bulls, again, I don't know what the Bulls are doing, but yeah, Dante DiVincenzo, D'Angelo Russell, Kyle Kuzma, those are the kind of the C-tier players. Which teams you could see those players on?
Kuzma to Sacramento, now that you actually bring it up, Chris, is a good fit because I think they need a more, I don't know what the proper word would be here. They need more scoring on that team so that the burden is not so much on Fox and Sabonis, particularly Sabonis. I think Sabonis, as he's the number 2 overall player on that team, but I think anything they could do to try to prevent him from being the number 2 scorer on a night-by-night basis would be better. So I think Kuzma would present an upgrade there, and maybe Kyle Kuzma could make a 3-pointer at the end of a game 4 to avoid a series being tied up because everybody knew it was a brick once he released it. But, no, nothing specific there. So I think
just to throw it out there, Kyrie's taking a meeting with the Suns. I just saw on Twitter.
Who reported this?
Oh no,
Chris Haynes.
I don't think it's anything serious. They literally have they can barely sign role players. They can barely sign guys to come off the bench, let alone another.
I don't understand this.
Intends to meet with the Phoenix Suns when the free agency begins June 30th.
There's no.
Son, are you really going to take $1 million?
It's not even that. It's gonna be like $800K. What is going
Bro,
on?
I fucking hate Kevin Durant so much. Bro.
I don't think this is Kevin Durant. I think it's Kyrie being a net case. In that case, yes, a head case.
No, it is KD, bro. It is. It's always KD.
Kyrie.
It's always him.
You know what the funny part is? Literally, Manny goes in the chat. I truly hate KD. You guys are the same.
Bro, he ruins. Wait, did he? Is it our chat?
Okay.
No, different one.
Bro, but it's so. Oh my god, bro. Why is it even a thing? Fucking Chris Haynes, bro.
Anyways,
blame Chris Haynes. What the hell?
I mean, look, he's been so annoying with this whole Damian Lillard shit. I know he's his mouthpiece, but my god, whatever. Jurg, go ahead.
So Kuzma to the Kings, I think, is a really good fit. You mentioned Dante DiVincenzo there, Chris. I think between Dante DiVincenzo and Gabe Vincent, those are 2 guards that people are going to be very much competing for in free agency. My early prediction was that I thought Gabe Vincent to the Spurs was going to be a lock for certain. I'm not as 100% certain on that as of now, but it's a wait and see deal. And then you mentioned DiVincenzo. I think a year on the Warriors, despite the fact they didn't go far in the playoffs, he's a good guard who doesn't need the ball in his hands. He can very much play within a system. I think a guy like him would be very much a valued piece on any team. If they weren't so stacked with the guards, I would love to say the Orlando Magic would try to take a stab at one of these veteran guards in free agency, but I just look at the amount of guys on this team that are listed between point guard and shooting guard, and you have Jalen Suggs, you have Jet Howard, who you just drafted, you have Markelle Fultz, you have Anthony Black, again, who you just drafted, you have Cole Anthony.
Jesus, bro. Oh my God.
So many goddamn guys between point and shooting guard there that because here's the thing. I think this might be semi-bold take. I think at least one team in each conference is going to take a step up from eliminated to play-in team next season.
Yeah.
I think it's going to happen in each conference. I think there's an opening here in the East because the Toronto Raptors, I don't think could be or should be as good next season, because I think with the John Collins trade, I think the Hawks are still trying to push heavily at Pascal Siakam to see if a trade can materialize there. And worth noting that Gary Trent Jr. wasn't traded. He opted in instead of opting out. So maybe he could still be dealt here. Like, Toronto has the potential to do some wheeling and dealing here. But I think there's an opportunity for one of these teams lower on. You look at the Indiana Pacers, who finished 35-47. You look at the Orlando Magic. You look at the Detroit Pistons, who they like so many injuries on that team. And now they made the addition of Monty Williams. I think those are three teams that are going to try to make a run at a play-in spot. And there's openings in the conferences, I think, to be a threat for that. That's, I think, one of the big reasons why they wanted to play in. So I think you mentioned the Pistons as a Dante DiVincenzo option, right, Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that could be the case. 50-50 because they did just, I don't know if it was them picking up or he picked it up himself, but Alec Burks is going to stay on the team.
Yeah, I can't see the Pistons.
His option got picked up, but $10 million, like, Alec Burks is predominantly just there for three-point shooting. DiVincenzo is just another guard to be able to play make, potentially. Could be the deal there. Or the Indiana Pacers with their bench. Like, there's decent players, but there's not a definitive guy. Like, you have Tyrese Halliburton there, you have Buddy Hield and Chris Duarte. Like, that's a solid lineup. Benedict Mathurin. But with those guys, like, there's no secondary guy that's a pure playmaker like Tyrese Halliburton is. Like, there's no other bona fide playmaker. I could see the Indiana Pacers being intrigued in one of these, like, B tier, C plus tier guards in free agency. Yeah, C plus is the way to describe it.
Yeah, B is a little too high. Funny enough, speaking of Chris Haynes, reports that the Houston Rockets are emerging as a strong landing spot for Kyle Kuzma. I mean, I think I'd rather Kyle Kuzma than Dillon Brooks. Right?
They're just going to throw.
That's 100%. Like, I mean, I guess Kyle Kuzma isn't the number one guy you look for like a veteran presence, especially. But he's kind of still like immature. He kind of fits into what Jalen Green and Kevin Porter kind of are. So I don't know how much that helps them, but I guess would be their best player. I guess it just adds, but like, I don't know if they want a real culture change. I don't think Kyle Kuzma's the guy to bring in.
I don't think he's immature. I just think he's a bird. I just think he's like a loser. I think it's just his stupid outfits just really piss me off.
I'm trying to figure this out with Houston here. They have 12 players under contract right now. And granted, some of this might be like two-way deals or whatever, not guaranteed. There are 12 players on this team under contract that are age 23 or younger. Forget trading any of these young guys. Some of these young guys are going to get cut in right now for summer league or for preseason. Like, I'm not arguing that Kyle Kuzma wouldn't be a decent move there for them, because they just need. I mean, they have plenty of goddamn scorers. Like, and would Kyle Kuzma supplant Jabari Smith Jr.'s place in the rotation? Because Kuzma's played both the 3 and the 4. Can the two of them play together?
More complaints.
What about is it Amen? I think Amen Thompson. Like, I don't know, man. It makes sense the Rockets are going after veterans, but just the way they've built this roster is just so weird.
But are we surprised, Jurg?
No, we're not. But I'm just saying, like, I'm really looking at it right now, and at least 5 or 6 of these guys are going to get cut, and I don't understand it. I really don't understand.
Don't beat yourself too much. Don't beat yourself up too much. It's not worth it. I mean, look, if the pay isn't like that much of a difference, what the hell? I'll sign with the Sacramento Kings, bro.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I want to hear what the contract offers are like at the end of the day, because if I'm Kuzma, like, yes, I understand Houston could pay you the money and stuff, but you've made some decent money. Like, I'm not saying he shouldn't get his bag, but this is a podcast that is all 4 players securing the bag. But if you're looking at the situation of, do you want to try to contend here a little bit? There is Sacramento, like you mentioned, Chris, or there's a team that's going to need a guy at the 4 to be next to their newly minted number 2 overall pick in the Charlotte Hornets. Like they just need talent. They they need some extra talent on that team. And Kyle Kuzma at the 4 there next to Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I know I mentioned their names earlier, but they have PJ Washington, who they send the qualifying offer for, and I really hope he gets a contract because that dude is going to be paying baby mama money for a long time. So good luck with that, Zion. But you have that, and then you have Miles Bridges, who obviously he missed all of last season for being an idiot, and now he's apparently able to come back into the NBA. How do you, if you're Charlotte, again, a similar situation, but like, how do you balance the players that you just had versus now maybe going after and trying to make a new splash? Because at some point there's supposed to be a transition in the organization. Would that, I know it's not the flashiest, it's not the best move, but it'd be semi-flashy to bring in a guy like a Kyle Kuzma into the organization. So I don't know. I think Charlotte, you mentioned teams that could try to make a run here, Chris. I'm not saying for multiple guys, but I think Charlotte is going to try to take a stab at one of these B tier players.
They have to
in this free agency group because like they went from back-to-back years in the play-in to 27 and 55. That's bad.
Yeah. I don't know. That organization's in flux. Yeah. Okay, let's cap it off with these last 2 questions. One of them is mostly directed towards Jurg. Jurg, well, in the whole podcast in general. In the event, Damian Lillard's decision of just like waiting, I think is going to have like a domino effect because like other teams, like they're going to have to pivot, bro. Like, we can't wait for your bum ass. So, Jurg and Dame as well, but I guess Jurg is his team. What do we see the Heat's direction with the, in terms of just like pivoting away from Damian Lillard? Because you kind of have to. Like, I could see them kind of going, again, within the margin moves. Pat Riley will use his satanic magic that he usually uses, like a Gallinari and a Christian Wood type moves. And second, and we'll cap it off with this. This will be the main event question. Jurg, you kind of, touched upon it.
I also have a question for you guys based off of something I saw from Twitter.
Okay. Let me say this one, then you could. Okay. And then the main event question will be, which team could make the biggest leap in free agency based on like the moves that you think they'll make, right? So if it's just like a middle tier team, funny enough, not skyrocketing, but like jumping into a team that we got to take more seriously. Or is it like a tanking team that we could see becoming like a playoff team? You know what I mean? Like distance traveled. Like which team do you see covering the most distance traveled? Jurg, what was your question?
So it's funny because you're going to ask me a predominantly based Heat question. So I was going to ask our 2 Knicks fans here a predominantly based Knicks question.
Oh, fuck.
The idea of restricted free agents and RFA.
Fuck. I know where this is going.
I know like a club option got exercised, so it's not something you have to worry about now. But Emmanuel quickly, what? Because I was just reading some stuff about him trending. I don't know why it's trending because like you guys still have him under contract, but like what's the deal? Well, the Knicks in general, because we kind of avoided talking about them. Like we briefly mentioned the Lakers, where I'm about to go into an expose about my Heat here. But like, what do you guys think about the Knicks and what they could or may not do in this free agency period, depending on if they choose to stay the course or not?
The Knicks are in a very tough spot right now. I feel like. I think they have good people in the front office to kind of deal with like cap and like numbers and all that shit. I think Brock Aller is like a superstar capologist that they hired like 3 years ago. It's tough. I don't think they're going to be major players in free agency. Like again, within the margin type moves, they've been patient and rightfully so. So I think like Dante DiVincenzo is going to be their biggest move. I think he ends up signing with us. And that's a good move. That's a good move. You don't want to like just, limit yourself here and then like make a move that's just gonna, fuck you up for the next few years. And I think the Knicks have been pretty decent at that. I think DiVincenzo is going to be like a decent signing for us. I think that's the move they make. That's the biggest splash they'll make. In terms of IQ, this is what I'm talking about. Like it's from what I'm reading, he's going to want in the 9 figures, which is like $100 million. I'm assuming for over 4 years. I love IQ. The playoff, I know he got hurt, but like the playoff performance against the Cavs is like a red flag a little bit. I don't know. I love him to death, and I do want to re-sign him. He's homegrown talent, and I think he's like, I think with the new CBA, I think there's you could make the argument that he might be underpaid just because like 20 million right now, like when you adjust for inflation, is like what 12 million like a few years ago. Um, but man, if you sign him for like, for example, so say if they sign him 4 years, 100 million, right? Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, and now IQ are going to be making above 100 million. I mean, excuse me? I don't know, man. I'm a little in flux. I'm a little indifferent. I know it sounds like Dame, for example, is going to hate it probably if we resign IQ for like 4 years, 100 million. I don't. The new CBA is so difficult to understand, and I don't really have a good grasp on it. I just know that like some, contracts, like some numbers, will be a little misleading, but I don't know. I'll say this though. I think if the Knicks do make a trade, I know it's not for agency, but if they do make a trade, I think IQ is going to be the main piece. I think they'll try to trade him just to like avoid paying him that much money. But yeah, you also have the Josh Hart contract, so I don't know what the Knicks do because the Knicks are like they're balancing like I don't want to purgatory. Like they're not fully there like the Bulls are, but like they're like kind of almost there, like semifinals ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but again, they made the semis and they could be a little bit more closer to like making, to making more moves. They're leaning, I think they're more leaning towards the purgatory, but I do think there's some decent moves away from like making a little bit of a main event push, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
So they're at a tough spot. I think them and the Sixers are Sixers a little bit more above them, but like I think those are the two teams. So we talk about the lower class, purgatory, and then there's upper class. In between purgatory and high class is the Knicks and Sixers. I feel like Sixers a little bit more above because you haven't beaten James Harden and all that, but that's where the Knicks are, and I don't like that position. Not the worst position to be in, but like it's just I don't know where they go from here. I don't necessarily. I know I'm like kind of rambling right now. I don't hate Leon Rose. I think he'll do the right thing. I do think they've been patient. That's another thing I'll give him credit for. And I like Brock Aller. Brock Aller is, again, masterful strategist here in terms of capology. So I think they'll do the right thing. I think I'll talk myself into whatever they do would be the right move. But, man, I don't know. 100 million for IQ is going to be a bit OD. Again, I'm not familiar with, like, the new CBA. I know, like, the gist of it. I just don't know, like, the nitty-grits of it. But I probably didn't answer your question, Jurg. My fault. But, yeah, that's how I stand on it. Indifferent.
Makes sense.
Talk to me soon.
Dame, what do you think about both quickly? And I mean, Crispin, I didn't even know the whole thing with the Hart deadline. Are you worried, Dame, that you guys aren't going to be able to keep Josh Hart?
I don't give two fucks if we keep Josh Hart. Now, I think his contract is going to be awful one way or another, and I'm okay with letting him walk. I didn't like the trade to begin with. I didn't like giving up a first-round pick knowing that he's a pending free agent and he's probably going to demand over like $15 million a year. Which I'm not okay with. The guy gets a couple offensive boards and averages like 8 points a game. I'm not paying $17 million over 4 years for something like that. He's literally just Bruce Brown. You see Bruce Brown going to get $17 million a year for 4 years? No. So I'm okay with letting him walk. Unfortunately, I think for whatever reason, the Knicks are trying to build Villanova in the NBA. So they're probably going to overpay him and re-sign him, even though nobody in the NBA would pay Josh Hart that on the open market. Manuel Quickly, I actually do like Emmanuel Quickly, but I don't like him for the projected price tag that he's going to be. At 4 years, $80 million is like my absolute max. I would not go over 4 years, $80 million. Anything like 4 for 100 or 4 for 120, something like that. Like I just think that's absolutely insane for a guy who is a bucket. He will give you 20 points a game, maybe not 20 points a game, but he will be able to explode here and there, average like 17 a game. Played pretty good defense, but like he's still undersized guard. He's not really a facilitator that can control the floor as a point guard and kind of be a floor general and get other guys involved. He's very erratic, obviously. You see in the playoffs, it's kind of disappointing to see him like that. So for max like $20 million a year, if you got to go that fifth year, okay, that's pushing it if you don't re-sign Josh Hart. But I'm just scared that the Knicks are just going to give both these guys the contracts that they want, and then they're really going to be in that purgatory phase where they just have a bunch of guys that are making $20 million a year, $25 million a year. That's going to get them nowhere because they have no true star or superstar that could take them to the next level. and they don't have the flexibility on their roster to go out and either sign on or trade for him because they have just a bunch of bad contracts on their books of just guys instead of like stars that can make things happen and kind of carry a team. So I just don't like the direction that it looks like this free agency is going for the Knicks. Especially Dante DiVincenzo. It seems like they're absolutely in love with this guy. Probably going to pay him the middle of exception of like $12.5 million a year, which I think is also another overpay.
You're gonna have to, Dame. You gotta have to overpay.
He's not worth that. He's not good.
So
like
how much
he's solid for a
how much would you
contending
give
team.
him? How much would you give him?
I just wouldn't give him shit. He's just not. Just don't take him. Just don't bring him in here. Let him go.
So what do you want the Knicks to do for this free agency, bro?
I don't think there's anything you can do, but just dig yourself into a deeper hole for later on. Because what else can you do to make yourself a contender for this year? Nothing.
Well, Dame, you just mentioned a guy there momentarily. Like I kind of forgot about him. I don't think we brought him up, but he might be one of the best role players in this class. Bruce Brown. Like Bruce Brown's going to get paid by somebody. He's going to get like a 4-year, $60 million contract in the open market.
The thing is, I know, like
that's another guy just gets a couple offensive rebounds.
Probably. All right. No, I mean, see, now we're under.
Well, if he didn't get a couple offensive rebounds for the Nuggets in these playoff runs, he would not be getting the price tag.
Yeah, and then they don't win the championship if he doesn't make those plays, man. Like he's a winning. Here's the thing. I understand that we're probably gonna have to overpay for IQ and Josh Hart. I do think like they'll be used as trade assets eventually if like that's the case.
Bro, no one's gonna want them on bad contracts.
No, but they're not necessarily bad contracts with the new CBA. I know, like this is the thing. I think a lot of people like, it's kind of hard to like see these numbers and not think that and not think that they're bad contracts because like for movies, right? If a movie made it like $10 million in 1997, like when you adjust for inflation now, it's like a lot more, right? So I think it's worth a lot more. So like a $20 million contract, for example, would be Jurg, how much do you think like 10 years ago?
So 10 years ago, how much would be the equivalent of a $20 million now
contract now? What would you say?
Like you're saying on a yearly rate? Like $20 million a year?
Yeah.
Like so, like in 2013, like a player making $20 million now back then would have been like what 5.5, 6, 7.
That's what I'm saying. Like you have to adjust for inflation. Like that's I know it, bro. From an optic standpoint, like 20 million for like a role player, I know it's like it doesn't look good, but it's just new CBA. It's just I think
like I said, IQ it to me is a role player. He's not a star. He's not that thing over the top. So I'm okay with giving him that like 4 for 80, 4 for 85, whatever the case may be. Something a little over 20 mil. Josh Hart, I just don't think he's that good of a role player. Like, he'll play a little defense, he'll get a couple of offensive rebounds. He's not worth anything over $15 million to me. Like, if you can't give me double-digit points on a nightly basis, I'm not paying you that much.
I hear you, bro.
I just don't see it. I think Bruce Brown is better than Josh Hart from the first place. And if he's going to cost less than Josh Hart, I'm 100% going for him instead of Josh Hart. I said, they have this obsession with this Villanova shit, which is so annoying.
Well, I mean, I think that's a microcosm of what the actual like concern I have. I mean, I don't mind Villanova boys, especially if that ends up us getting, Mikal Bridges, but that's neither here nor there. The issue that I have with the Knicks kind of operating a little bit, because they've operated, is functionally a word? They've been functional with the way they've operated. I mean, the bar was low because of like the years prior. I do think the CAA family connection thing is a little bit annoying here and there. I think they try to take care of their own sometimes, right? And it's just like, I don't know, like, guys, can we just do what's best for the team here and not just like be this mafia type shit? I mean,
it would look better if you had a superstar, because at the end of the day, the Cavaliers for LeBron's 4 years there and a little bit of this current Lakers team is a lot of clutch sports guys. But the thing is that at least LeBron is there. At least you have the superstar. Like, if you're going to look at the end of the day in all sports, let's be real here. All sports, you can find trends with this stuff, right? I think I said this on the podcast a while back. Something I learned recently. Like, if you really look at general managers, like trade patterns, general managers in these leagues only talk to anywhere from 4 to 7 guys at a time. Like, they're not talking to all other 30, 29, 30, 31 general managers in their league when they put up a guy for a trade. No, they're going to their first 4, 5, 6 guys that they tend to deal with and talk with the most first. And only then if they feel more, I don't know, desperate is the proper word, but then they would branch out after that. Like, And so, like, you look at, we kind of made the joke, but the Eagles with all these Georgia Bulldog defensive players they're going after in hockey because of the system with guys coming in of the juniors in Canada. Teams, if they've had success in a league, they might prefer going with maybe the OHL over the QMJHL, for example. I'm just throwing like an example out there. Like, it's not that it's not a bad thing. It's just like, this is a thing in sports. Like, teams, you said it, Chris, like, people will fall in love with what they are most known to. What have I said on the show before? You'd rather trust the devil you know than the devil you don't. And for the Knicks, for Leon Rose is a guy who he worked with CAA before, if I'm not mistaken, or was it Worldwide West who
No, it was
CAA
CAA.
guy? It was. So at the end of the day, like, it's not surprising that they're going after these guys, but at some point, like kind of Dame said, you need to make that evaluation of like, are these the guys that are going to help you? Forget just taking care of your own, because like I said this, not last season, I said this 2 years ago about the Knicks when you guys made that playoff appearance, but you guys lost to the Hawks. I said, if you bring back the same exact roster from this season, they would miss the playoffs. And what happened last year in 21-22? They missed the playoffs. You can only afford stagnation for so long before the collapse comes. Like, collapses don't happen overnight. Collapses don't happen in one moment. They happen over a course of stagnation and people being content. And like, for the Knicks, again, we're entering the second time in 3 years now where there was a season of hope, and it looks like they're kind of being stagnant in the offseason. And look, my team is not a exempt from this. It's looking like a similar thing in Miami at this moment. But I think we need to keep in mind. But at the end of the day, to Dame's point about some of the contracts these guys get, this is a weak free agency class, and a lot of these guys are going to get paid. 2016 in both the NBA and the NHL had some of the worst contracts that both the sports have seen in the last decade signed in those periods. And it was because those were relatively markets, but the players there, like these guys have to be signed. Bar none. These guys need to be on teams next season. And yeah, Dante DiVincenzo is probably going to get 12 to 13 or maybe $14 million. Same with Dillon Brooks. Bruce Brown is going to get $15 million a year on his next deal. Josh Hart is in a similar situation. We may not agree with it. We may not like it, but that's what we need to figure out. What makes it complicated now, I think, is ultimately the CBA with the new tax brackets and what teams would have to sacrifice for signing these guys. That's why I think this is one of the tougher free agency periods for us to try to predict here. Because it's not even just the players that are available. Because we kind of talked about it. We all agree it's Fred VanVleet going to the Houston Rockets. I think Draymond, there's a chance he's going to sign with the Dallas Mavericks, and Kyrie should be staying there. We think Kuzma could go to the Kings. All these different predictions we have. But in terms of the next round of players after that, like, think about this, guys. The B tier / C+ tier of this free agency group would be the C tier of a normal free agency period. But because these guys are higher up now, it is going to cause a overvaluation based off what the market says and comparable contracts that have been signed in the past. Like, Josh Hart may not be 17 mil a year to us, but there was somebody who signed for 15, 16, 17 mil last year that Josh Hart is going to have his agent, or probably his agent's already going to do, is comparison shopping, be like, okay, this guy got 17 mil. Josh does this, and that better than this guy. I don't know what this, and that is, but again, please stick with me here. Like, there are so many factors into leading this. I think this is the most clustered free agency that we have seen in a very long time. I think this is unpredictable, but not in the kind of unpredictable, like crazy stuff is going to happen. It's unpredictable. It's like, who the hell is going to sign in these spots? I was saying Gabe Vincent to San Antonio for the last month. I don't know anymore if he's going to go to San Antonio. Like, it's wild cards everywhere.
Yeah. That's why I'm not like bearish on like any moves yet. You know, these are just this is just speculation at this point. Again, Jurg kind of like from a macro standpoint, you kind of nailed it. But like for the Knicks in general, I also don't think they're in an awful position.
Right.
You know, so
do you want me to go on my team now?
Yeah. I mean, look, we don't have that star yet, but again, I think it's also important to not trade for the wrong star. You know, so the Knicks have been smart in that echelon. But yeah, Jurg, you talked about your Miami Heat. In the event that Damian Lillard does his, shtick, whatever.
Of not running from the grind.
Yeah, the Heat have to pivot. What direction do you see with the Miami Heat? You can be brief if you want.
Yeah, so we already saw they're using the amnesty stretch waive provision to stretch Kyle Lowry's contract over 3 years. So it's going to be a saving of like 18 or 19 mil this season in particular, but now it's going to be a $9 million cap charge each of the next 2 seasons after this, which not great. Ultimately, I know Kyle Lowry, the whole deal was like he was going to be involved as salary filler in one of these big deals that apparently I read earlier that just Pat Riley was unable to convince Mickey Arison that they should go after Beal as hard as they should have, which, okay, Mickey. But I think for the Heat, it's so hard because I think the whole perception and idea was to go after Dame. And I think whatever potential moves you could try to make with your current roster would cost you Dame. Because Max Strus and Gabe Vincent, talk about guys that are going to be valued in this free agency course. I still think both are going to be given that high-level mid-player, or high-level, Jesus, the mid-level exception of like the higher tier. So like 12, 15 mil. I could see Gabe Vincent getting 12 to 15 million. I see Max Strus with shooting in this league. At minimum, he's going to be getting $10 million a year on this contract. And will these guys be getting it from the Heat is my question. The main disappointment of Miami not making a trade at this point was mainly not getting rid of the Duncan Robinson contract, because I saw an avenue where the Heat, maybe not to the team they were going to directly trade with, to the Pacific Northwest team or with Washington, but I think the idea of potentially trying to coalesce into a 3-team deal and getting rid of Duncan Robinson would have given this team the flexibility it needed to, A, get the star that they were trying to add, but then maybe keep one of, if not both of the guys between Vincent and Strus. I said this a week or two ago. A lot of Miami's UDFA players that they've developed the last couple seasons all follow a similar mold. They can't play defense worth a lick. Like, I'm sorry, like they've improved, but Max Strus is at times all right defender who apparently loves not to box out. Bruce Brown, Derek White, Duncan Robinson, God bless his soul. He tries, man. He really does try. But Duncan Robinson, I think Chris could score in the paint on Duncan Robinson, honestly. I know Dame could, but I think Chris could score on Duncan Robinson in the paint, it feels like.
I'm thinking way too highly of Chris. It has nothing even to do with Duncan Robinson.
He just needs one layup. All Chris needs to do is just hit one layup for me. But Duncan can't play defense consistently. Kevin Love is a reliable veteran who wants to stay, which I actually would be very much open to. Mm-hmm. I think Miami's entire free agency is completely wrecked, and I think now needs to be made that decision of, are we going to wait for Dame and take the massive risk, or are we going to quote unquote run it back with this team and maybe make a marginal add here or there? That's the decision you need to make. Again, my ultimate thing was getting rid of Duncan Robinson. If we can't do that, I don't see us bringing back Strus, because Strus is basically just going to get not the exact money that Duncan got, but like probably 4 years at 40, 45, 48 mil. And then Gabe Vincent is going to be paid to be somebody's backup point guard. Although now that we got rid of Lowry, I think that kind of opens the door for Vincent, because with no Kyle Lowry anymore, it's who the hell is the point guard there? It really pissed me off that Oladipo opted into his deal too, but of course, because he's coming off an injury. So I think Miami's offseason plans have been ruined for the most part. I think Arison not budging on giving a legitimate shot at getting Beal really just stung this team. And now with he who must not be named playing for they who must not be named, doing their little offseason song and dance for like the 6th offseason in a goddamn row, it's over. Like, I don't have any hope in what the Heat offseason could look like right now. And I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. And then I just don't see an avenue right now where this Heat team definitively gets better, because I just talked about stagnation, guys. I'm saying the same thing about my team. If this Heat team brings the exact same team into the regular season, it's going to be a similar deal. We are not going to be, I don't want to say lucky, but we were in the play-in this season, and maybe an injury or two away. If Jimmy had played like 5 more games, maybe we could have been the 6th seed. But goddamn, like, come on, just come on. So I don't know. Pat Riley's gonna have to pull what I don't want to say one last, but he's gonna have to pull out another magic trick to make this team better. And it's hard, man. I don't see an avenue where this team definitively gets better with the roster staying as is. I just don't, unless they move off a deal or two. But it's extremely difficult for this Heat team to be able to do with how limited it is. So I'm hoping whatever signings they make are just, like you said, Chris, the right signings. Bring in the right kinds of players, bring in the guys that would help establish things, low risk. Like, it's going to have to be low risk, high reward type signings, and how many of those are there in this free agency class? Like, I think there are a couple more guys than we are considering at the moment in terms of cheap players who could be signed on relatively value deals for like a year or two. That's why I brought up the year or two thing, because I think the role players of this draft, of this free agency class, are going to get those shorter term deals. So if Miami can make the right move in the bargain bin for any of these guys, that would be excellent. But I'm just, it's not the highest of hopes here, to say the very least.
Yeah, but whatever the Heat do, I trust that they'll make it far in the playoffs. As usual. Okay, final question. Based on what you think they might do in free agency, which team makes the biggest leap? We could all say a team.
Mm-hmm.
Dame?
I'd say it's the Spurs.
Okay.
Based off their draft, and I do think they have a lot of cap space that they can sign nice veteran pieces to put around, like obviously Victor, and obviously having Pop there, he's gonna try to win and try to grow a winner around Victor to accelerate his growth and try to build them a contender as quickly as possible. I mean, Pop isn't getting any younger, so he does want to win as quickly as possible. He knows it's not going to happen this year or even next year, but as long as they keep bringing in pieces, I think they're going to try to win as much games as possible.
Yeah, they've slowly been building their young core before getting Wemby. But they're under the radar because they're the Spurs. I think this is a little tough because I don't know. I don't necessarily know how much, how much they'll do in free agency, but I'm torn between the Pistons and the Thunder. I don't know why. I just see both those teams making big leaps next season. So I'm gonna go with like the bottom tier teams here, but because OKC it's kind of cheating because they're getting Chet Holmgren back. I'll go with the Pistons. I think they'll make a move in free agency. I think they're primed to make at least one move. I think the Thunder kind of stay packed a little bit here. They have a specific type, but I can see the Pistons making a leap. I think they'll be a play-in team. Jurg?
That's going to be a massive leap they're going to have to make because they were.
I just said it just to be different. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
Do I mean it? I'm not going to tell you, bro.
No, I'm with you, but it is just it's just one of these things I see like the Bulls because I before the play-in played out, the Bulls had 40 wins, the Pistons had 17 this season, so it's going to take a lot to make up that difference. But I see why you're going with them because the idea is that Cade will not miss 60 games this season, and maybe that'll be the difference again with Monty Williams there. I don't mind that, Chris. I probably would have considered picking them if you had not. God, if Mr. Baby Mama Drama could actually stay healthy in New Orleans, I would consider them, but I can't give them that credence. So I could cheat and just say the Mavericks, but it has nothing to do with their moves.
Yeah,
I will say. Because I don't know the exact move that they're going to make. I'm torn with like you, Chris. I think either the Pacers or the Magic are going to make a real push to get back.
I like the Magic a lot.
I think the Magic have just a really good core there. My only thing is that you're saying based off of free agency because I just don't know with the current roster construction. I listed all the guards earlier that are on this team, right? But even if you look at some of the forwards on this team between small and power forward, obviously you have Paolo who's going to be there. You have Franz Wagner who's supremely talented. But then you have what is the future of Jonathan Isaac on the squad?
Hopefully not in the league. Fuck him.
I don't know what it's going to be. Wendell Carter Jr. is a solid big man. Bol is there, but is Bol really long for the Orlando Magic? I don't know. With Orlando, I just don't know where this team could make that roster move to improve. I think the Indiana Pacers are a solid signing away in this free agency period. Because, again, you have the franchise cornerstone in Tyrese Halliburton. You have a veteran there who I think he might still get traded in the offseason here, but Buddy Hield. But even if they do end up trading Buddy Hield, you have guys there in Chris Duarte, another young guy in Benedict Mathurin who came out with all the confidence in the world last year, and he kind of backed it up. He was pretty good, to say the very least. I'm pretty sure he made one of the all-rookie teams, if I'm not mistaken, had to have, with the season he had. And then you have this team. I think their draft picks were not overwhelming players, but I think there was a lot of talented potential players in their picks, predominantly with Jarris Walker. I think Jarris Walker could be a very, very good pick for them. He had a pretty solid freshman year in Houston, so I think that he could be a guy to watch out for in that regard. If Miles Turner, because again, it all depends on what the future of these goddamn players are. If they just get the right kind of four there, maybe a veteran to join that lineup it could be something, maybe a defensive orientated player. Jalen McDaniels is supposed to be a free agent. Jay Crowder is going to be a free agent, just to name a couple of power forwards there. Torian Prince, like just an extra wing player there, preferably a guy who could play the 4. Or maybe if Miles Turner plays better at the 4, maybe a 5. Like, I don't know. Like, I think the Pacers are one really good signing away from taking that next step into making it back into the playoff picture.
Yeah, they started off the season pretty well last year too, so that's a good pick. That's a good pick. I think mine was probably the worst pick, but fuck it. All right, I think that'll do it for this week. Man, there's gonna be so much movement that we'll eventually talk about. Yeah, definitely gonna be some questionable signings. There's gonna be a bunch of head scratchers. Gonna be some eye openers. Kyrie's taking meetings for jobs that'll pay him $800,000 a year. Just NBA, man. It's so never ending. But this is the best time of the year for the NBA. So, yeah, that'll do it for this week, fellas. You stirred the ship with me beautifully. Jurg, where can they find us on the socials?
Guys, you already know where you can follow us on social. It's at somewhat.sports on Instagram to get all the latest updates of when we release episodes just like this amazing episode. And thank you all so much for the people who have listened to the most recent episode of the podcast before this one that will grace your beautiful ears as well. Speaking of the IG, I know it sometimes gets slow, guys, but we are going to be doing something very special during this NBA and NHL offseason over the course of the coming days and weeks. Chris, Dame, and I will be posted on our Instagram, again, at somewhat.sports, on IG stories, will be quick, rapid-fire analysis from any one of us regarding a particular move that was made over the course of a certain day or so in free agency. It might be a little bit delayed, depending on things, but at most likely, or I would say a very good shot that at least at the end of the day, you'll be able to just rifle through Instagram to see what our reactions were to each of these signings. What will Dame have to say about the Knicks eventually keeping Josh Hart for $18 million a year? That could be on the IG story. My thoughts on what could happen for the future of Gabe Vincent and Max Strus, that'll be there. Chris's ultimate Kyle Kuzma prediction, will it come true? Who the heck knows? But if it does, what will he have to say about it? Any one of us could be selected to have a quick instant analysis on Instagram, and you guys will get that over the coming days and weeks between NBA free agency and NHL as well, predominantly by yours truly. But yes, that is us on Instagram. To listen to this amazing podcast that graces your beautiful ears, that you have all so much, that we thank you all so much for listening to. It's Somewhat Spaced in Sports on YouTube and Spotify. Like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel. 5 stars. Follow us on Spotify. Please leave us a review. Let us know what you want more of. A little bit of a discombobulated free agency list, but trust, guys, there will be much more fun to be had and a lot more organization once the NBA itself actually gets itself goddamn organized, to say the very least. But at the end of the day, guys, Dame said it, I think, at the start of the show. It's getting hot out there. The rain will hopefully go the hell away. And it is going to be officially, truly, the summer of 2023. And what have I always said about this show? It will be the Somewhat Sports summer of 2023. Join us on the rise.
Beautifully put as always, Jurg. Beautifully put as always. Appreciate you and Dame for, flying planes with me. To all the listeners listening, if you made it this far, we appreciate you. And until next time, peace.